Hamas is trying to buy time by deceiving Israel by transferring the remains of people that they say belong to the hostages who were murdered in captivity, but it turns out that they were not. The forensic scientists confirmed that 2 sets of remains transferred over the weekend do not belong to the hostages. For their part, Hamas is demanding from the Red Cross heavy machinery to recover the bodies of hostages beyond the yellow line. And in related news, during the ceasefire, IDF forces located a tunnel network in eastern Rafah, while a United States military drone captured video of terrorists brutally attacking aid truck drivers, looting the content of his truck. We'll also take a look at some of the actions that the IDF managed to carry out inside the Gaza Strip, even after the ceasefire, as it continues to clear terrorist infrastructure beyond the yellow line. And in the northern arena, the IDF continues to act against Hezbollah in Lebanon, eliminating 4 terrorists in a vehicle strike in the Nabatieh area. And meanwhile, the IDF's northern command warns that UNIFIL is acting against the IDF in Lebanon. And further afield, there was drama in Tehran over the weekend as a senior figure in the Iranian parliament calls for a revolution in the regime. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host Yair Pinto, and with me today is Shoshani, and we are bringing you all the truth about what is happening in Israel. So don't forget to click the subscribe button so that you never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. The remains that Hamas transferred to Israel via the Red Cross over the weekend were examined, and it was determined that they do not belong to any of the hostages. Even today, 756 days after the start of the war on October 7th, 11 fallen hostages are still held in Gaza. Israel claims that Hamas knows where all the remains are, and it is refusing and is showing a cynical show of searches, stalling for time. And amidst this, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned that if an international force does not demilitarize the Gaza Strip, the IDF will do it itself. Hamas's military wing seems to be going in the other direction, and now it claims that its people are prepared to recover the bodies of the hostages that are buried beyond the yellow line, but they demand that the Red Cross supply heavy engineering tools. Israel has rejected this demand and requires the return of all the bodies unconditionally. And meanwhile, an American UAV documented Hamas gunmen taking over an aid truck in Gaza as the IDF continues to destroy terrorist infrastructure in eastern Rafah. Since the agreement went into effect, the Nahal IDF infantry forces have been operating in Rafah and destroying the underground tunnel network. And the IDF spokesperson's office announced that the forces continue to operate in the area until the destruction of all the terrorist infrastructures and the defeat of the terrorists who remain inside these tunnels. Also over the weekend, 15 tube launchers and a Hamas tunnel network were located, and there was an exchange of fire with Hamas terrorists who attacked the IDF troops. It has also emerged that during the recent flare-up before the ceasefire was re-established, the IDF and the Shin Bet eliminated dozens of terrorists in the Gaza Strip, amongst them a Nukhba commander. Also today, we will tell you about a rift between Hamas and Qatar, which could be very consequential for the terrorist organization moving forward. And in the northern arena, 4 Hezbollah terrorists were terminated and 3 were wounded in an Israeli strike against a Hezbollah operative in the village of Ruman in the southern part of the country over the weekend. The American ambassador in Ankara, who also serves as the envoy to Syria and Lebanon, warned that there is no time to waste and urged the leadership in Beirut to act more quickly to disarm Hezbollah, or Israel may move against them. He also declared there will be no war between Israel and Turkey. Just the fact that he felt the need to say that makes me a little nervous. Let me know what you think about this in the comments section. And speaking of Lebanon, after the United Nations peacekeeping force shut down an Israeli UAV in southern Lebanon at the beginning of the week, it was claimed that the IDF attacked in response, and the army hastened to clarify that this was done without justified reason, adding that UNIFIL is exceeding its authority. So after years of watching Hezbollah commit obvious violations of the Security Council resolutions that they were supposed to enforce, now all of a sudden UNIFIL decided to shoot down an Israeli drone. That seems very odd to me, and I invite all of you to leave a comment about what you think about this. And in the meantime, UNIFIL is expected to be dismantled and evacuated from southern Lebanon in the coming months, despite an attempt to extend its mandate. It has never done much good in southern Lebanon, and I say the sooner it is out of there, the better. In other news, TBN Israel's senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will bring us a report today about why the Iranian threat is here and it is not going anywhere. It should be assumed that Iran's weakening is not necessary in an irreversible process. In light of this reality, Israel must prepare for the possibility of another round of fighting against Iran, especially in a scenario of the restoration of its nuclear capabilities, and also continue the enforcement activity to prevent the restoration of the pro-Iranian axis headed by Hezbollah. There was also some other news in the northern arena as an agreement with the al-Julani regime in Syria is approaching, and al-Julani himself is expected to meet President Trump at the White House on November 10th. And according to a report in Access, the two sides are drawing closer together. So this should be the first such meeting between a Syrian head of state in the White House, coming after the backdrop of the new diplomatic efforts led by Washington to advance direct negotiations between Syria and Israel. So, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and with me is Mati Shoshani, and today we're bringing you Boots on the Ground, the report that brings you all the truth about what's happening in Israel. And today we will review the continuing battle against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shiite militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are taking their orders from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. So a moment before we begin, I want to remind you that every day the war in Israel continues. And around the world, as media channels publish lies, fake news, and anti-Semitic propaganda, here at Boots on the Ground, we're fighting back day by day with one weapon, the truth. And we need your help, so keep spreading the truth with us. Share, follow, leave a like, leave a comment, and make sure to never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Now, we are starting our report today with the latest developments in the Gaza Strip, as senior officials in Israel's security establishment expressed anger towards Hamas's leadership, claiming that the organization is deliberately creating obstacles to the implementation of the first stage of the deal, particularly regarding the return of the remains of the fallen hostages. According to those officials, Hamas knows exactly where most of the hostages are that were murdered in captivity, but is staging a cynical show of searches and scans in order to delay the progress to the next stage of this deal. On that note, the experts at the Abu Kabir Institute of Forensic Science in Tel Aviv announced on Saturday evening that the human remains that Hamas transferred to Israel overnight between Friday and Saturday via the Red Cross do not belong to any of the hostages. That means that the remains of 11 slain hostages are still being held in captivity in the Gaza Strip. The IDF claims that there are at least 2 sets of remains of the fallen that Hamas can return in the immediate time frame, and assesses that there are between 3 and 5 fallen whose whereabouts Hamas does not know about. And according to Palestinian reports, Hamas's searches focus on trying to locate one specific fallen hostage in the area of Khan Yunis, but the terrorist organization continues to stall until the American ultimatum will expire in an attempt to create a new day after reality in the Gaza Strip and to postpone the decision on disarming the terrorist organization. So it is important to remember that the deal formulated with the mediation of Qatar, Egypt, and the United States included a first stage of releasing live hostages and returning the remains of the fallen, and in the second stage, a process of demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, laying down the arms and establishing an alternative government to Hamas. However, according to Israeli officials, Hamas is dragging its feet deliberately because it fears the implications of Stage B, especially new governance and the loss of its military power. With this in mind, Israeli intelligence officials are saying that a handover of remains that were not those of Israeli fallen hostages may have been deliberate. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke out over the weekend regarding the impasse in the deal and declared unequivocally, if a multinational force does not enforce the demilitarization, the IDF will do it itself. Another senior political official added, without real implementation of Stage A, we will not proceed to Stage B. As long as Hamas holds the remains and lies about their location, there will be no progress. The El-Qassam Brigades, which is the military wing of Hamas, the terrorist organization, published a statement over the weekend saying that they are prepared to retrieve the remaining bodies of Israeli and foreign hostages buried beyond the yellow line where IDF forces are deployed in order to bring the affair to an end. They also called on the mediators and the International Committee of the Red Cross to provide the organization's teams with the heavy engineering tools necessary to extract the hostages' bodies. And here, at TBN Israel, we will continue to spread the whole truth, so share, follow us, and most importantly, don't forget to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, so that you'll never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. And now, I want to tell you about one of our partners, an organization which is making a real difference in the lives of ordinary Israelis. If you've watched our show before, so you probably already know about the miracle of Arza. Now, I'm really excited to share this with all of you. Arza has launched their brand new Hope Box, or Tikva in Hebrew, and it's the most beautiful box yet. And with the release of the living hostages, and please God, the rest soon, this theme of hope couldn't come at a more powerful time for you to join. So every single item inside your Arza box is handmade by local Israeli artisans and family businesses. So with your purchase, you're directly blessing and supporting the people of Israel while bringing the land of the Bible, where Jesus walked, right into your home. Inside, there is gorgeous hope necklace with the Star of David and the map of Israel, delicious food and spices, and an amazing ceramic dish made by a group on the Gaza border that employs youth with disabilities. They are only selling this box for a few more days, and it's almost sold out. Plus, they just increased our discount, so you'll get 15% off with the code TBNIL15. So, if you love Israel, or you know someone who does, this is the perfect way to experience and share the beauty and hope of the Holy Land. Just go to arzabox.com/TBNIL and get yours today. Again, that's arzabox.com/TBNIL. Now, we're getting back into the news and moving to a look on how the IDF is operating boots on the ground during the ceasefire and Hamas terrorist organization's violations. Over the weekend, there were reports of a series of Israeli airstrikes east of Khan Yunis, and according to the reports, the strikes were carried out in the area within the Yellow Line. IDF soldiers in the Gaza Strip continue to operate east of the Yellow Line and destroy terrorist infrastructure. The combat team forces of the Nahal Brigade under the Gaza Division are operating in the Rafah area, demolishing the underground tunnel network from which terrorists continue to operate. Also, since the ceasefire agreement went into effect, our forces have located 15 tube launchers of rockets and advanced Hamas combat equipment. As they are carrying out this work, Hamas terrorists have emerged from the tunnels and attacked them on several occasions, leading to fatalities and injuries amongst the IDF troops. However, the IDF emphasizes that the forces will continue to operate until all the infrastructure is destroyed and every hostile element in the area is defeated. Beyond that, after violations of the agreement by Hamas and before the renewed enforcement came into effect, the IDF and the Shin Bet eliminated dozens of terrorists in the Gaza Strip, including a Nukhba force commander, as well as 2 battalion-level terrorists, 2 deputy battalion-level terrorists, and 16 company-level commanders. Amongst the terrorists that were eliminated in these recent strikes were operatives who participated in the massacre of October 7, 2023. And in related news, United States Central Command published footage on Saturday from an American drone in the Gaza Strip showing terrorists raiding an aid truck, attacking the driver, and looting its contents. Immediately afterwards, the terrorists continued with the truck to an unknown location. This is the first footage that the United States military has published from its aircraft operating above the Gaza Strip to enforce this ceasefire. And according to the United States and its military that is operating here, the recording occurred on October 31st and the attacking terrorists are Hamas operatives who looted the truck that was traveling as part of a humanitarian convoy on its way to residents in the northern part of Khan Yunis. A statement of the American forces added that the coordination center in the Kiryat Gat Israeli city received notification via video surveillance from an American MQ-9 aerial drone flying over the convoy to monitor the implementation of the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. The terrorists attacked the driver and stole the aid and the truck itself. And over the past week, international partners have provided Gaza with more than 600 trucks of commercial goods and aid every day. This incident undermines those efforts. United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio also released a statement in response to this violation, and he said in the video, Hamas continues to deprive the residents of Gaza of the humanitarian aid that they desperately need. The theft undermines international efforts to support President Trump's plan. Hamas is the obstacle. They must lay down their arms and stop the looting so that the Gaza people will have a better future. U.S. Central Command also emphasized that nearly 40 countries and international organizations are represented at the coordination headquarters in Kiryat Gat in Israel, whose purpose is to assist in the flow of humanitarian, logistical, and security aid to the Gaza Strip. It's important to note that the American military operates surveillance drones in the airspace over Gaza for this very reason, to monitor developments and to make sure that Israel and Hamas comply with the terms of the ceasefire agreement. Media reports have indicated that this is done so that the United States will have implemented verification of the facts on the ground without having to rely on information provided by parties to this conflict alone. It is also important to point out that according to the agreement signed between Israel and Hamas, at least 600 trucks carrying aid and goods designated for the private sector will enter every day to Gaza, and alongside that, 50 fuel and gas trucks. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you all the truth about what is happening in Israel. So keep spreading it, share our content with as many people as possible, give a click on the subscribe button, and let's continue. Now we're shifting into the big picture in the Middle East and bringing in senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani to let us know what the situation is. So, Mati, the Middle East is shifting all the time between a few serious players like Qatar and Egypt, Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and his gang are indeed determined to restore the nuclear project and the Iranian influence in this region, but the regime in Tehran is exhausted and the Ayatollahs and their ambitious plans are failing to take off, while the United States is showing full support for Israel. Can you bring us all the details about this?
We are once again watching a shift in the way the US government applies pressure to this part of the world. We're going from the diplomatic, the military action, back to substantial financial pressure. And we're seeing this in several key areas. The first one is the Iranian government that's once again pushing for nuclear capabilities and a public win. Secondly, we're seeing it applied against Hamas through the Qataris. And what we're seeing right now is the hands-on application of maximum pressure levers on the financial side to reshape and continue the process that has been taking place for months now in the Middle East, but this time through the lens of finances. Now, number one on that list is, of course, the Iranian government. This is an interesting story. The Iranian government, all the way back to June of this year, has been under incredible pressure from the US and, of course, Israel. Now, let me remind you, we had a blitz attack by the Israeli Air Force and the American Air Force on Iranian facilities, at the end of which everyone was expecting the Iranians to come back to the negotiation table and for sanctions eventually to be removed as they re-enter the classification of countries that play nice or play fair. But that hasn't happened. The Iranian government has doubled down on their efforts of trying to portray what happened back in June as a win, or at least not as a loss for them. And they've continuously violated every guideline by international agencies, specifically the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, that has to do with their nuclear program. In fact, we know right now that the Iranians are on a scramble mission to gather up as much materials, both chemical and hardware, to rekindle, to restart their nuclear program. And what we're seeing in response is the US government putting maximum pressure on the Iranians through financial levers, specifically sanctions, to prevent them from going back to carrying out a nuclear program or a scramble for some kind of nuclear bomb. And it's effective because we're seeing the response on the ground from people in Iran talking exactly about that. Let me read you a quote. The ex-broadcast chief Mohammad Sarafraz in Iran says it plainly, says the system needs a revolution in governments. And what we're seeing with that statement is a crack in the unified image that the Iranian government is trying to portray, leaning towards giving in to Western pressures. Now, the Iranian government is a complex organization to try and understand, but let me try and break it down in just two clear thoughts. They're an animal of political survival, more than anything else at this point. And what they need to do to stay in power is to portray to their people and people around the region that they are strong and strong enough to continue fighting against the West, and that the American and Israeli agenda haven't really overthrown their sphere of influence in this region. And why do I say sphere of influence? Well, let me explain this. What we're looking right now, or what we're looking at right now, are the death throes of Iranian influence and their backers, Chinese to a certain degree, the Russians to a certain degree, in this region. And what we're seeing is their strings connected to Hamas, their strings connected to Hezbollah, their strings connected to destabilizing in Syria, all being challenged by the US interest and US agenda in this region as we speak. So this isn't one play. This is Iran on multiple levels being challenged. And this time it's happening through the lens of finances. So Israel's been on looking on everything that's taking place with the Iranians. We know that the IAEA has been reporting that the Iranians are once again pushing and enlarging, or trying to enlarge, their 60% enriched uranium stockpiles. And when they're doing that, they're doing this with the help of the Chinese. They're trying to get machine pieces and several chemical compounds that are required to go back to enriching uranium or kickstarting their project. Now, why are they doing this? They're doing this, the Iranians, of course, are doing this because they want to give a perception of their nuclear program continuing. Their country has paid dearly for their nuclear program. It's paid dearly both in sanctions and in physical damage to the country and life damage to leadership of both the nuclear program and their civil governance, and of course their religious government. And they want to show something in return for that. They don't want to admit the fact that they've fully lost both to Israel and to the US in this round of the game. And now we're seeing them try to take action through other proxies in this region. And the US is very cleverly responding by addressing every one of these issues. Let me just tally what's been happening in this area. We're in the process of restabilizing Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza at the same time, in one fell swoop as they speak. And the US administration has been doing this together with the help of the Qataris, which are a big piece that we've talked about a lot lately, and with the help of several other countries. And the Iranians look at all of this with concern and think to themselves that they have to disrupt this, otherwise it will be a substantial win for the US side, which is the US together with the Israeli agenda in this region. So here's what they're doing. They're trying to prolong the destabilization in the Gaza Strip. They're trying to prolong the destabilization in Lebanon and, of course, in Syria. And the US comes to the table and says very clearly, guys, we know what you're doing, and now we're working on a regional pact to reshape the way the finances are working, put the squeeze on you, and put the incentive on the other side. And we're seeing something very interesting happening because of that. We're seeing the Qataris side with the Americans publicly and support this maximum pressure campaign against Hamas to end the conflict, and of course, to end the conflict and reshape the economies and the governance of both Lebanon and Syria. And that is something we haven't seen before. We're seeing the leadership of Doha stand together with the US publicly in a call and a move to really restabilize this region in a way that will exclude the Iranians from gaining benefit from the changes taking place. Here's where things get really interesting inside the Gaza Strip. Hamas has, of course, refused to be disarmed from their weapons in the area that they still control in the Gaza Strip. And Israel has continued to apply military pressure, but the point is that the next step is supposed to be regional and not just a localized solution led by the Israeli armed forces. So this is where Qatar comes into this picture. Qatar has been working together with the Americans to put maximum pressure on Hamas leadership for them to give up power and move on to the next phase of rebuilding Gaza and then this part of the Middle East. Now, Hamas is pushing back, and they're pushing back hard. They are furious with the Qataris siding with the Americans on this, and they've even threatened to not respect or not honor any change in their leadership if it allows them to disarm or allows the Hamas organization to sort of capitulate to the demands of the Americans. But this is big because usually, and for the last 2 years, the Hamas leadership outside of the Gaza Strip that were based in Qatar and in Turkey to a lesser degree, they were, at least publicly speaking, they were unified with the messaging coming out of the military leadership within the Gaza Strip. And we're starting to see a substantial split in that messaging as Qatar pressures the leadership of Hamas. Now, this is good. This is actually really good for both Israel and the people of Gaza because we need this to happen. We need there to be a tear between Hamas leadership outside of the Gaza Strip and within the Gaza Strip. And we need pressure for within Hamas to say, guys, lay down your weapons, because that's how we get to the next phase. Now, the next phase, which is disarming Hamas and having a government within the Gaza Strip that is not tied to the terrorist organization. Now, there's another interesting piece here, which is the Egyptians. The Egyptians have been a very significant and vocal player in reshuffling the power balance here in the Middle East. They have a lot to gain from siding with the Americans, from stabilization in the seas leading into the Suez Canal, that is a big piece of their economy, to financial incentives, and of course the direct aid that they receive from the US. So again, they're very much on the side of the US administration. But this time, they're also playing a military role that supports the US and the Israeli agendas in the Gaza Strip. They sit on the Philadelphia corridor that channels everything that goes in and out of the Gaza Strip into the Sinai Peninsula controlled by Egypt. And they want to make sure that they're a substantial player in the next phase that takes place, and that they live a day after that doesn't have Hamas in control of the Gaza Strip. Let me just remind you that the Egyptians are ideologically opposed to the Hamas movement, which is related to the Muslim Brotherhood, which was the huge disruptor of the Egyptian government going back to the Arab Spring. So again, in that agenda, Israel, Egypt, and the US are all aligned in wanting to remove Hamas from the leadership of the Gaza Strip. So to tally everyone, we have the Egyptians, we have the Qataris, we have the Americans, and we have Israel on the military side, all pressuring change in this region that removes Hamas. And this is happening both locally and globally on a financial scale. One more important piece that we need to take into account is Syria. Now, there are rumors of the Syrian president, Ashara, visiting the White House sometime as soon as next week. Now, these are not yet confirmed, and they're probably playing a careful game here with releasing this information to gauge public response to it. But what we do know is that if Ashara, the Syrian president that is strongly affiliated with Islamic movements, if he visits the White House, that is a signal to everyone in this region that Syria is on the side of the Americans long term. That's, again, a very substantial shift. What we're seeing here in these last days is a dramatic amount of pressure applied by the US government through the prism of finances, through the Qataris, through the Egyptians, through the Syrians very possibly, to push back on the agenda of the Iranians. Their goal always was disruption through proxies. They had Hezbollah, they had Syria to a lesser degree, they had the disruption in Judea and Samaria, and of course Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and the US is picking out every last remain of control and influence that the Iranian regime has in this part of the world by using financial levers. And over the next days and possibly week or so, we're going to see the fruit of that pressure take root in this region. Hopefully, with pushing forward the Hamas organization to the next phase of the deal, and more importantly, in pushing back on Iranian agendas in this region in a way that is both public and effective. And the hope is that it destabilizes internally the government of the Iranians, that it allows voices of or pushback from within the Iranian regime, but also that it unifies a coalition that is anti-Iranian agenda, that it pulls in the Syrians through the leadership of HTS, Ashara, and that it pulls in the Egyptians, which we're already seeing, and that it pushes back on Hamas agendas. And that all of that together would be enough, just enough, to keep the Iranian agenda at bay and bring forth the next phase of Trump's plan for this part of the world. Over the next days, we're going to watch this all unfold in front of our eyes, and it is moving very quickly, guys. So make sure to keep up to date with everything we're releasing here at TBN Israel. Now back to Yair Pinto.
So thank you very much, Mati, for this insightful report that brings many vitally important subjects into focus. And now, let's shift our focus to Israel's northern arena. So give a click on the subscribe button so that you remain tuned to the truth in real time. And if you are already following us, don't forget to hit the like button. Lebanon's Ministry of Health announced on Saturday evening that there were 4 fatalities and 3 people were wounded in an Israeli strike aimed at a vehicle in the village of Ruman in the south of the country. The Air Force strike, whose target was a Hezbollah operative, occurred hours after the United States ambassador to Turkey, Thomas Barak, who also serves as an envoy to Lebanon and to Syria, said at a conference in Manmam, Bahrain, that Hezbollah still has a large force of about 40,000 militants, alongside between 15,000 and 20,000 rockets and missiles. And according to Barak, while a soldier in the Lebanese army earns $275 a month, an operative in the Hezbollah terrorist organization is paid $2,200 every month, nearly 10 times as much. That obviously makes it a lot easier for Hezbollah to recruit, retain, and train fighters, and it also increases the motivation for their fighters, while Lebanese army troops have historically shown very low levels of motivation. This is just one aspect of the challenges that are faced by those forces trying to disarm Hezbollah, and there are many others. But it is not just the Lebanese National Army that is in a poor shape. As Envoy Tom Barak said, Lebanon is a failed state. The banking system is ruined, and there is no electricity. People rely on private generators, and even for water and education, private providers are required. The state is Hezbollah, which in the south provides water and education. Barak added that Israel continues to strike in Lebanon every day because Hezbollah's weapons still exist, and he urged the Lebanese leadership to act faster to disarm the terrorist organization Hezbollah, saying that thousands of missiles in southern Lebanon still threaten Israel. It makes no sense that there is no dialogue between the two countries. Lebanon has no time to waste and must concentrate the weapons in the hands of the army, or Israel may respond in Lebanon in accordance with the developments. The ambassador, who besides his post in Turkey, also serves as President Donald Trump's envoy for contacts between Israel and Syria and other missions, who also referred to Ankara's part in the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, saying that it was Turkey's relations with Hamas that made it possible. I think that stability will remain and that Turkey will take part. However, there is another player in South Lebanon, and that is the United Nations. Early last week, the United Nations peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon, UNIFIL, announced that it downed an Israeli UAV operating near the village of Kila. This is close to the northern Israeli village of Metula on the other side of the border. The downing was carried out by a French unit of the organization, and according to a UNIFIL statement, and was followed by an IDF quadcopter dropping an explosive grenade towards the peacekeepers alongside tank fire. The IDF denied the report, and the IDF spokesperson in Arabic, Colonel Avichai Aderi, clarified that the UAV was downed without posing a threat during routine intelligence collection and patrol activity. In any case, this event is only a tip of the iceberg in a troubling trend against the background of years of turning a blind eye to Hezbollah's entrenchment. In close conversations, senior IDF figures expressed growing frustration that they define as unleashing the reins and bullying by some United Nations forces, and warned the force is acting against the IDF and exceeding its mandate. A senior military source in Northern Command also sharply criticized UNIFIL's conduct and did not spare harsh words against the peacekeeping force, saying that we encounter them when they are documenting IDF forces and not documenting the borders and other things under their authority, like Hezbollah. According to him, we conveyed blunt and clear messages in protests about their activities and irregular actions. We understand that they are not an assisting force, but a foreign force doing suspicious things that go beyond their mission. To give some background, the United Nations peacekeeping force, numbering about 13,000 soldiers from several different countries, first deployed in southern Lebanon in 1978. In August of this year, the United Nations Security Council extended its mandate in the area until the end of 2026, and there is an expectation that this mandate will not be renewed, and in 2027 it is supposed to withdraw from the land of the Cedars, Lebanon. Maybe someone is trying to stir up some trouble so that UNIFIL continuous existence can be justified. It wouldn't be the first time and the first example of a corruption in the United Nations system. Germany, like other European countries, has already expressed support for extending the force's mandate in southern Lebanon. And in the meantime, UNIFIL is also operating in sectors not under its defined rule, such as assisting in the rehabilitation of villagers near the border with Israel, alongside supplying fuel and food to the Lebanese army. However, Israeli officials say that the interception of the Israeli reconnaissance UAV, the drone, early last week, was done by a French force that acted without authority in an attempt to demonstrate that it is still relevant. Such fire, according to military sources, explain that could easily have spilled over into the nearby town of Metula and endangered the civilians. It's also important to point out that during the IDF's operations to expose Hezbollah's readiness to implement its plans to conquer the northern part of Israel, the Galilee, and to thwart its activity over the past 2 years within the Swords of Iron War and the maneuver in southern Lebanon, it was again proven that for nearly 2 decades, UNIFIL allegedly granted quiet cover to Hezbollah's massive entrenchment north of the Israeli border. Huge terror infrastructures, including tunnels and weapons depots and observation posts, were built and dug right next to the United Nations forces outposts and next to their bases. I've seen it myself. Although they were supposed to enforce the Resolution 1701 and prevent the presence of illegal weapons south of the Litani River, UNIFIL soldiers, it seems, choose to turn a blind eye and did not report and did not act, thereby endangering Hezbollah to complete the conquest of the Galilee and their plan under their noses. Although the Shiite terrorist organization has been greatly weakened in this war with Israel, and its legendary leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was eliminated along with many of his most capable deputies, it still holds, according to estimates, significant firepower. The main concern in Israel is that dismantling Hezbollah, while the Lebanese National Army lacks sufficient capacity to take up positions there, will create a dangerous vacuum into which terrorist elements will immediately enter. The Lebanese force, as noted, rely on UNIFIL fuel to run their military vehicles in southern Lebanon and even receive food from the United Nations peacekeepers. UNIFIL's force is currently composed of representatives from Italy in the west to France in the eastern sector. Amongst them are also soldiers from Ghana, Finland, Indonesia, Ireland, Nepal, and other countries. UNIFIL, as it claims, has been busy over the years increasing its force and inflating its manpower. Against the background of the decision to end its operational mandate in the near term, UNIFIL is expected to reduce about 1/3 of the force, and the IDF is very concerned about what will happen when they're out of the picture. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to bring you all the details about what is happening in Israel. So keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us. Most importantly, don't forget to click on the subscribe button if you haven't already, so that we will stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Circling back to United States envoy Tom Barak, he announced over the weekend that the interim president of Syria, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, is expected to visit Washington very soon. Barak, who spoke with journalists on the sidelines of the Manama dialogue in the conference in Bahrain, expressed hope that during the visit, Syria will join the United States-led coalition aimed at defeating the Islamic State organization, or ISIS. The expected visit to the White House on November 10th will be the first time a Syrian leader visits the American capital to meet the president, but this will be al-Julani's second visit to the United States after he addressed the United Nations General Assembly in New York in September. A coalition of jihadist groups led by al-Julani seized power from Bashar al-Assad last December, and since then, his interim government has been working to renew serious ties with the world powers who shunned Damascus during Assad's rule. Al-Julani has publicly declared that his past involvement in Al-Qaeda and other jihadist groups is behind him, and he has hinted that he will direct his forces to move against ISIS and their attempts to re-establish themselves in Syria. The announcement of his expected visit was published just hours after a report surfaced that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is expected to arrive in Washington soon to promote a defense agreement and arms deals with the United States. According to the New York Times, bin Salman is not interested in promoting normalization with Israel at this time, a matter that will also be raised with the Syrian president. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on this matter. So keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us. Most importantly, don't forget to pray, because this is a spiritual war and we need your help in praying. So let's pray for IDF soldiers wherever they are. Let's pray for wisdom to our leaders. Let's pray for all the innocent lives that are affected by this conflict. Let's make it personal. Let's pray for the hostages that are now getting back to normal lives with their loved ones in Israel. Remember, God is listening to prayers and He performs amazing miracles. So keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.